How can we love better is a very good question. And since last Saturday, we've been trying to answer that question as we've been looking at the story of Jesus. Last night, we looked at how God can help us in those dark seasons and moments of life, and how the cross is a reminder that we're not alone. We talked last night that it's okay not to be okay. And we were reminded last night that even when we feel that we're alone, we're never truly alone, that God is always with us. Tonight, I want to start off by sharing words from a song that came out about 3 years ago. Those of you that are a little bit younger maybe know who this is, or maybe everyone knows, who knows. The song is titled Anyone by Demi Lovato. And the lyrics are really interesting, and I think it kind of screams out to what many times we feel inside, or as a society we go through, or we're going through right now. So I'm going to read those lyrics, and I'm going to put some of those on the screen for us to think about tonight. It says there, I tried to talk to my piano, I tried to talk to my guitar, talk to my imagination, confided into alcohol. I tried and tried some more. I told secrets till my voice was sore, tired of empty conversation because no one hears me anymore. 100 million stories, 100 million songs. I feel stupid when I sing, nobody listens to me. Nobody's listening. I talk to shooting stars, but they always get it wrong. Well, let's see if I can get this. I feel stupid when I pray, so why am I praying anyway if no one's listening? Anyone, please send me anyone. Lord, is there anyone? I need someone, anyone, please send me anyone. Lord, is there anyone? I need someone. I think our world is crying out that we need someone. And maybe you this last week or this year, those last couple of years, you've been screaming out that you need someone in your life. That you need something different, that you need something new, you need something to change, you need something to get you past the funk or the tiredness or the feeling of stuck or just the feeling of being empty. And I don't think it's a foreign concept to humanity or the history of humanity. It's nothing new. We've been wrestling this forever. And so we haven't learned very well how to deal with pain or how to deal with fear. And so our natural inclination many times when we're feeling this way is we take flight or we fight. It's either fighting or fleeing, right? And sometimes we think if we just fight hard enough, things will change. If we just, have enough energy and perseverance, then maybe the pain will go away. And the more we fight, we learn that the pain doesn't go. So sometimes we feel if we just go far away enough, if we just hide enough, if we just bury things inside, then things will be all right. I don't know if this is your situation or your circumstance, but sometimes carrying everything inside seems easier than having to share it or explain it. So maybe today you feel a little bit like this song. So maybe today you're hiding from someone, from something, or maybe you're hiding something inside of you. I want to remind you tonight that you're not alone. You're not alone right now, and you haven't been alone throughout history. Like I shared last night, some of the things I love about the Bible is the stories, and I'll share it again tonight. The people in the Bible weren't any better than us and weren't any worse than us. They were just like us. Just like us. And there's one person in the Bible that kind of reminds me of maybe how I deal with pain, or I see us as a society dealing with pain, and his name was Peter. Peter was a fisherman for the moment he was able to walk. His dad had taught him how to fish. He had hung out with fishermen. He knew how to sail a boat. He knew how to kind of tell the forecast. He knew everything about water and fish. And one day Jesus is kind of starting off his thing, and he sees Peter, and he looks at Peter and says, Peter, you look like a very good fisherman, but I got a better plan for you. So, leave your nets, leave your boats, leave your family, leave your friends, come follow me. So Peter started following Jesus, but it doesn't mean that Peter was perfect. Just because Peter was a follower or a disciple of Jesus doesn't mean he was better off than anyone else in society. He was a regular human being. And we can see all of his regular stuff all the time in the Gospels. Like, the Gospel writers are not trying to hide it. And that's one of the reasons I believe that the Gospels are true. Because if it was a made-up story, then why would, like, the authors be talking bad about themselves and their friends? And so we see Peter messing up all the time. And if I were to, like, measure all his mess-ups and mistakes, I would probably say, like, the one with the worst impact, or the one that was, like, at the wrong time. Like, if you were to mess up, you should have done it way earlier or way later, but not there. Was like during this week that we're remembering today. Jesus had told his followers that at some point and very near, he was going to go to the cross. And he kind of told his disciples, where I'm going, you can't go with me. I wish you could go with me, but you can't go with me. And where I'm going, you just don't understand. Like, even if I tried to explain to you so that you could come with me, you wouldn't be able to do it because you would probably run away or you want to fight. So this is not for you right now. And Peter's like hiding stuff in his life. He's been hiding it for a long time. But in this moment, it's like all coming out. It's like, Jesus, I want to go with you. I'm different, Jesus. I'm a better disciple. I'm a better person. I was always a good kid, a good son. I was always good at school. I can do it. And so we find this story in Matthew chapter 26, verse 33, where Peter replies to Jesus and says, look, Jesus, even if all fall away on account of you, I will never. In other words, Jesus, all these like flaky disciples, they're going to leave you, but I won't. Like all these other followers that you have, the people that say that you're friends, they're going to abandon you, but I won't ever. Has anyone in the room ever made a big promise before? Yeah? Am I the only one? You can raise your hands, okay? Yeah, you made a big promise before? Yeah, maybe today. How did that go? Yeah? We make big promises all the time to people that we love, especially the people that we love, the people that are closest to us, the people that know us the best, because big promises have a way of kind of masquerading everything else. I will never do that again. You probably will. I will do better. I promise. I will do better. I will be better. God, if you get me out of this one, I promise, I'll go to church every time they have something. God, if you can just help me through this situation, I'll volunteer every single time. I'll be the first one there, the last one out. And Peter did this, just like us. He said, Jesus, I'm going to be there with you. Don't worry about it. It's going to be bad, but I'm here. I got your back. And so Jesus turns to Peter. Oh, this is way later on. All right. So the story goes on, and the story goes on, and we can tell that whatever Peter is hiding is coming out. Whether it's this weakness that he has inside that he just doesn't want to let out, whether it's the loneliness he's always felt in his heart, whether it's the desire to seek approval from his peers and from his parents or just from Jesus in this moment, or maybe it's just past failures that he wants to overcome, so he's using this to masquerade the past. Jesus, I will never leave you. I feel that Peter is hiding. And it's something deep in his heart, and maybe it's kind of packed up in pride and this desire to be more and do more. And maybe Peter has his desire for no one else to see who he really is, this desire for Jesus not to be able to see deep inside of his heart. He's trying to hide it away, and he's probably done a good job of hiding it away from everyone except Jesus. You see, we can become very good liars to ourselves about who we are. We can lie to our parents. We can lie to our peers. We can lie to our spouses. We can lie to everyone in the room. But there's one person that we can't lie to. And so through time and as we grow up, we find ways and methods and words and plans to kind of just cover up the ugliness inside. Ways to cover up the pain inside, the abuse that we have inside, the loneliness that we have inside. And throughout Peter's story, we see this stuff coming out. Like one day they were on a boat and Jesus had sent them off. They're in the middle of a lake. Remember, Peter knows water. He knows boats. He knows storms. Big storms coming in. They're like, we got this, we don't need help. They kind of start maneuvering, they're handling the storm, but the storm gets stronger and stronger and stronger to the point where water's coming inside the boat. They're beginning to sink. They're starting to get a little bit scared and very scared. In the middle of this chaos, they see someone walking on water and they said, we're done. Like, they don't care anymore about the storm. There's a ghost walking on water. They said it's over, right? And as this person gets closer, they realize it's Jesus walking on water. Like, what in the world? And out of all 12 disciples, Peter's the one that says, Jesus, if that's really you, if you really are Jesus, if you're not a ghost, if you're not the walking dead, then let me go out to you. Like, let me walk on water with you. And he takes that first foot off the boat and he steps on the water and he doesn't sink, and he puts another foot. And then he takes another step and he can look down and around. He's in the middle of a storm. The storm doesn't matter anymore. He's soaked already, but he's walking on water. He's been always on water, but on a boat. But for the first time ever, he's walking on water. And for a split second, Peter's like, I've done it. I've made it. Like everyone said, I would never make it this far in life, but I've made it. And for a split second, he believes that he's walking on water because he's good, because he's strong, or because he just knows about water, just because he's a good person. And he looks back at the boat, maybe mocking his disciple friends and saying, look what I'm doing. And in that moment, Peter sinks into the water. All that pride came out and he sinks. It's like the pride weighed him down. And Jesus could have let him go deeper into the water, right? Like he could have let him sink a little bit more to learn a better lesson. He could have let him swallow a good amount of water. It could have left him there for a good minute. He could have let him die and then brought him back to life because he did that stuff. But he goes to him and he grabs him by the hand and he pulls him out. Pulls him out. Peter's probably up to that point in his life, his greatest moment and his worst moment back to his greatest moment. Then we have this story where Jesus says, I'm going to the cross, you can't come with me. Jesus, I'll never leave you, I'll never abandon you. 30 minutes later, just 30 minutes, 40 minutes later, as Jesus has been taken from one place to another, as he's been arrested and he's going through trial, Peter's kind of following from afar. He doesn't want to leave Jesus. He's made a huge promise. He's wanting to prove to Jesus that he's better and he's more. And as he's following Jesus, some people recognize him, say, hey, aren't you the one that was there when Jesus fed 5,000? Weren't you the one that gave me the bread? Weren't you the one at Lazarus' house, the time that Jesus was there teaching? Weren't you the one at that first miracle there in Bethany where Jesus made this humongous miracle from changing water to wine? Wasn't it you? Aren't you Peter? And Peter gets confronted 3 times by these individuals. 3 times he gets asked if he's a follower of Jesus. 3 times he's asked if he's one that's been associating himself with Jesus. 3 times he's asked if he's a follower of the one that calls himself the Messiah. And 3 times Peter says no. And Jesus had predicted that he would fail him 3 times, and when he did, that this crow would sing. And you can imagine how Peter felt every time he said no. Every time he said no, something shot straight into his heart, reminding him he wasn't good. Every time he said no, it's this pain he felt, this loneliness, this shame and guilt in his heart, saying, I want to do better, but I can't do it. I'm just too broken. I just can't change who I am. Jesus, I want to do more, but I can't. And even before that moment, when the soldiers come into the Garden of Gethsemane and arrest Jesus, Peter's let me fight for you. You can't be arrested. Let me step up for you. Like, this is not justice. This is not right. You're the Son of God. If God's not going to stand up for you, I'm going to stand up for you. So Peter whips out his sword. For the first time, we didn't know Peter carried around a sword, but he had one apparently. He takes out his sword and he cuts off a servant's ear, trying to protect Jesus from his mission. And Jesus does the craziest thing. As he's been arrested, he kind of picks up the guy's ear and he puts it back. Maybe you've been there before. Maybe in the last couple of months or couple of years, you've been trying to defend God or stand up for God in this type of way, not a really healthy way, because it's not really about God, but it's been more about you. In a desire to show God that you're this good person or this good Christian or this good follower by doing your thing and kind of wanting God to bless that thing. I'm here to remind all of us that when we do those types of things and then these big promises for God and others, it's not really about God and really about others. It's about something completely different. And I know we're going somewhere tonight because there's the right amount of silence in the room to know that something's happening in our hearts, right? And I think it's when we hide behind our masks, the mask that we've created, the mask that we kind of lie to ourselves. You know, like Peter's trying to be this super macho man for Jesus, and Jesus is like, I don't need that from you. You don't need to prove to me that you're strong. You don't need to show me something that you're not. And then Peter comes back like, let me be this super disciple for you. Let me follow you wherever you go. And Jesus is like, no, I don't need that. And so he's like, okay, let me at least be the super follower that will just never abandon you. And if I'm able to do that, and when I do that, then maybe, Jesus, will you just accept me? Maybe Dad and Mom, will you accept me if I just get in, if I get the good grades, or if I get the job, or if I don't get in trouble, will you accept me? Or will my boss accept me if I just do things on time? And so we put all these things on top of us to make sure that we're covering up our weaknesses and our brokenness and the things of our hearts that hurt. But there's something about pain that I think we all know. We can pick up methods, we can pick up words, we can pick up all sorts of stuff in life to cover up, but there's something about being alone. You see, when Peter messed up 3 times, he took off. Because when he lied to Jesus the 3rd time, he saw Jesus coming out and looking at him, looking at his heart and looking at what he had done, and he felt so guilty and so ashamed that he ran. I don't know how far he ran. This I do know, that if he ran enough, he probably found himself being alone. And when you're alone, there's nothing in life, there's no stuff, there's no degree, there's no accomplishment that will cover up the pain that we have in our hearts. You see, when we're alone, there's nothing that can replace the insecurities that kind of haunt us from time to time. When we are alone, there's nothing that can cover up the past abandonments and abuses in our lives. When we are alone, there's no lying about who we are and what we've become. You see, we truly have a sense of who we are and what we become, and we can't hide from that. And something that I learned from Peter's story is that God can't bless who I'm pretending to be. He can't bless that person I want to be. He can't bless the person that I'm trying to be. He can't bless that mask that I put on it. He can't bless that. So you can imagine how Peter's feeling in this moment, having denied his friend and his master, his guide, his teacher 3 times, and this has become a breaking point in his life. Like, this is the lowest of the low that Peter has ever gotten to. He's run away because he's confronted with who he is and what he's done. And maybe he's having a hard time now coming to grips with all the emotions and all the feelings, not wanting to go back anywhere. No one, he doesn't want to see anyone. He doesn't want to retell the story ever again. But maybe it's in that moment that Peter begins to wrestle with a reality that changes his life forever. You see, up to that point, I think Peter believed, like many of us believe, that the enemy is always out there. Right? It's never our fault. I didn't do it. They did it. And if I do happen to do it, they made me do it. So it's never my fault. And we don't learn this as adults. We learn this as children in classrooms, in playgrounds, on the street. We learn that it's always someone else's fault. The enemy's always out there. But in this moment, Peter is realizing the enemy's not out there. The enemy's not even the devil. Peter is sensing and coming to grips that he is his worst own enemy. He's the one that made the promise. He's the one that's denying Jesus. He's the one that's gone out of his way to prove to Jesus that he's someone that he's not. And it's only when Peter stops running that he realizes that Jesus had something to offer that no one else has offered in his entire life. The interesting thing that I want to share with you tonight is that you could keep running all of your life. Your enemy's going to follow you everywhere because the enemy's not out there, the enemy's in here. We are our own worst enemies. Our hearts betray us constantly, and they betray us above everything and anything else. So I think tonight, like for Peter, it's a good time to stop running. It's a good time to stop hiding. It's a good time to stop pretending. It's a good time to do as Peter began to do and he began to let go of himself. He began to let go of this pain that he had been kind of, bunching up inside. He began to let go of this identity of what he wanted to become or who he thought he was. And I think he begins to see all the moments that Jesus had loved him and had been patient with him. All the moments that he had said some stupid stuff and Jesus listened. All the times that he had betrayed Jesus, all the times he had forced Jesus to go in a different direction, all the times he had mocked Jesus, all the times he had fought with Jesus. And he's like, how stupid was I? And maybe it's in that moment that Peter realizes that healing only happens when we begin to let go. You see, Peter ran and ran and ran, and he kept running. He didn't even make it back to when his friend is being whipped and when nails are going through his hands and feet. He doesn't come back to just stand with his friend as his friend is suffering and his clothes are being ripped off of him. He doesn't stand with his friends as multitudes of people are mocking him and screaming at him. He doesn't even show up when Jesus finally dies on the cross and doesn't even help to have his body moved. He just kept running and running and running. And at some point, Peter must have heard that weekend that it was over. That his master, his friend, this person he had followed for 3 years, this person that was beginning to change his life, that he was dead. And I can just imagine Peter feeling all of this shame and all of this guilt and saying, I'm never going to have a chance to make things right. I'm never going to have a chance to ask for forgiveness. I'm never going to have a chance to kind of have a redo and have another opportunity with Jesus to show him I can be better or do better. And it's probably in that pain and suffering and that low point of his life that he forgets all of Jesus' promises, all of Jesus' words. He probably forgets that Jesus had said, I'll die and then I'll rise from the dead. And I think that most of Jesus' followers in that moment didn't believe that Jesus was coming back. I think they truly believed it was over. This new movement, this new way of life, this kingdom that was upside down. This revolutionary idea of love for everyone was over. So something amazing happens on that third day. Jesus comes out of that grave. And when Mary sees Jesus and talks to Jesus and she runs back to tell the disciples, they don't believe her. They want to believe her, but they don't believe her. It's like, okay, tell us where he is. And some disciples run to that spot and they realize that he's not in the grave, that he's come out of the grave. And then Jesus all of a sudden shows up in the room and he calls out Thomas, this disciple that had doubted and was always doubting. He says, come, Thomas, touch me where they laid, where they ran the nails through my hands and through my feet. Touch my side where they pierced me. And I can just imagine that they're going nuts. They'd never imagined this happening. Like, how could you raise yourself from the dead? Like, how could you come back? They killed you. Like, you were dead. And even though Jesus is back, I think that Peter's still feeling down. I think that he's still a little bit crushed. I think that part of his heart is still broken and he needs healing, he needs love, he needs reassurance, he needs to know that he still belongs, that he's still a part of this, that he has a purpose. And so look at what Jesus does. John chapter 21 verse 15 says that Jesus had this fish barbecue, this fish fry with the disciples, and after he had done that, he goes up to Peter and he says, Peter, son of John, do you love me more than these? Like, Peter, I know what you did. It was a messed up thing. You promised not to leave me, but you left me and you denied me 3 times and you did a bunch of other stuff. Do you love me? And Peter turns to Jesus and says, Jesus, I love you. You know that I love you. And Jesus looks at him and says, okay, feed my lambs. Peter's probably thinking, okay, we're back. Apparently, Jesus is okay that I betrayed him. I'm back in the group. But Jesus comes back again and says, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Like, do you really love me? Is it more than words? Are you talking from your heart? Are you just talking out of your mouth, wanting to be someone that you're not? Do you love me? And Peter looks at Jesus and says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus says, take care of my sheep. Maybe now Peter's feeling a little bit uncomfortable because the rest of the disciples are looking at him playing like, what's going on with these two? Like, Jesus, he already said it, like, let him go. He already felt bad about the situation. I think we're good. But Jesus comes a third time and he says to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Like, are you sure about this? Are you sure that you want to be part of my life and that you want me to be part of your life? Are you sure that you want me to look inside of your heart and inside of your mind? Are you giving me permission to just like fully submerge with you? To be one with you? Are you giving me permission to go into your heart and begin to fix everything that's broken and to heal everything that's wounded? Do I have permission, Peter? And it seems like Peter is kind of getting it because he's a little bit hurt. And he says to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. I think this is such a beautiful moment in the relationship between Peter and Jesus because Jesus comes back to Peter after Peter's biggest mess up. Jesus comes back to Peter knowing exactly what Peter needed. You see, Peter didn't need a Bible class. He didn't need a Bible study. Peter didn't need to be reminded that he was broken and that he was hurting and that he had all this pride inside of him. Peter needed to know that Jesus loved him, and he needed to verbalize not only to himself but to Jesus that he loved him back. Peter needed to give permission to Jesus to go deep inside of him, allowing him to give him the courage to follow him, but also the vulnerability to open up and say, Jesus, I'm not a good person. Jesus, I'm full of flaws and mistakes. I've been hurt and I've hurt people. I need you to heal me. So I think it's in that moment that Peter takes this new step in his life. I think he begins to believe that he's not what people said he was. I think he began to believe that he wasn't what he wasn't that person that did bad things or said bad things. He was greater than that. You see, I think that Peter's beginning to believe that he's truly a follower of Jesus and that it's not about him, but it's all about what Jesus had done for him. You see, what Jesus did for Peter, he can do for us. We don't need to pretend when we're Jesus. We don't need to dress up for Jesus. We don't need to come with good ideas or fancy rhetoric. We don't need to be on our best behavior with Jesus because he can see all of our behavior and all of our thoughts, everything we've done in the past, and he can go even into the future and see what we're going to do. So there's nothing that we need to do when we come before Jesus. He just wants our love. And just like he wants our love, he wants to love us. Are we willing tonight to become vulnerable enough to say, Jesus, I want to be in that type of relationship with you where I can be real, where I can be truthful, where I can begin to see you for who you really are? See, many times we resist Christianity and we resist God, not because God's not a good God or not because, Jesus is not a good person. I think many times we resist those things because we look at other people and we think that God is what other people say and do. And many times we're looking for things in other people that only God can give us. And maybe tonight you're looking for someone to bring healing into your life or purpose or a different direction. Maybe you're looking for someone to bring something new in your life, to bring you excitement. But I can tell you tonight, if you keep looking at people, you're going to continue to experience failure and mistakes and flaws because we're full of all of those. Jesus is the only one that we can look at and see that he's perfect. Jesus is the only one that we can look at where he can look back of us and see everything, all the good and all the bad, and not run away. You see, Jesus loves us so much that there's nothing about him, about ourselves, that would scare him. As a matter of fact, he knows everything about us and he runs towards us. So maybe tonight is a good night to stop running, to stop hiding, and to just open up to Jesus. Tonight, as we celebrate what Jesus did for us through communion, I do want you to take a moment tonight to think and to respond to the voice that's probably speaking or has been speaking to your heart this entire week, this year, or maybe just tonight, of taking that next step for Jesus. Maybe your next step is to accept Jesus into your life and say, Jesus, I want, that. I'm like Peter, I mess up a lot and sometimes I say a lot of stupid things, but Jesus, if you were able to accept him, you can accept me. Maybe tonight is an opportunity for you to take that next step with Jesus, say, Jesus, I'm here, I'm all yours. I want to try with you. Maybe you need someone tonight to talk to. You need someone to talk to, someone to pray over you, and that's your next step. Maybe you've been on this journey with Jesus, but you just never fully committed. And you're following Jesus from afar, but Jesus is like, I don't want you far, I want you close. And tonight you're feeling that Jesus is inviting you to give all of your heart and all of your life to him, and to just be baptized and fully commit to him as he fully commits to you. And maybe you're at the part in your life where you want to know more about Jesus. This is intriguing, this is interesting. I want to know more about that person that wants to be a part of my life no matter what. So whatever your decision is tonight, if you have your card with you, you can fill that out. And I'll be praying for you in these moments as you think about this and as you consider what Jesus is inviting you to take. Look, if what God is calling you to do tonight is not on this card, then please fill it in. Please fill it in. I do know that today can be a Good Friday for you, not because we call it Good Friday, but because there's someone that's good that wants to be part of your life. So as we have a moment of quiet and as we reflect on the words we've heard tonight and the music we've heard tonight, I'll invite the church to pray. If you just need a moment of silence, you can close your eyes and just rest in this moment and just let Jesus speak to your heart. Dear Father, we thank you so much. We don't deserve anything from you. Yet you come after us over and over and over again. I'm thankful for that story about Peter, about this person that wanted to be good but wasn't good and was pretending to be good. And even though you could see through all of that stuff and you could see through his heart, you still called him to be a disciple. And Father, tonight we're moved that even though he messed up big time, you didn't abandon him. You didn't leave him alone. You didn't go find someone else that was better. No, you came after him and reminded that he was loved, that he was a child of God. You reminded him that he was loved and he had a purpose and that he had a calling, and it went so much beyond his mistakes or his brokenness or his hurt. And so, Father, in the same way that Jesus ministered to Peter, may you minister to our hearts tonight. May you come close to our hearts and to our lives. May you come close to our insecurities and our fears. May you come close to our brokenness. And may you give us the courage to be willing to just let go and to let you move and heal and put things back together. We thank you, Father, for speaking to us tonight. And we thank you for giving us the courage to take a step forward and to accept you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. At this time, we're going to celebrate a part of communion that is very, very unique. As a matter of fact, not many people do this because it can be seen at times as an inconvenience. But as a church and as a Seventh-day Adventist church, we think that if Jesus did it for his disciples, then we can also do it. So foot washing is an act of humility where I put someone else's needs above my own, where I deal with someone's ugliness as they deal with mine, where I'm prepping my heart for what Jesus wants to give me. And so if you came with your family tonight or your spouse or your kids, it's a good opportunity to come together as a family, as a couple, as friends, to just allow God's humility to become your humility and to accept that first step in healing and growing in a relationship with Jesus. If you have no one to do foot washing tonight, you would like to do foot washing, we have several of our leaders going to be standing kind of in the surrounding areas of that place to my right, to your left. You're free to do that. There's no right way or wrong way of washing feet. I'll let your imagination just soar. But as we do that, we just ask everyone that's participating or just hanging out in your seats to just maintain our voices to a lower volume so that we can maintain an atmosphere of peacefulness and restfulness in God's presence. And so we're going to spend a couple of minutes doing that. There's no rush to do it. We have about 45, 50 chairs laid out for couples and families to go together. And so as we're finishing with communion, we'll come back to our seats and we'll wrap up the second part of communion where we celebrate Jesus' sacrifice on the cross for us. So at this time, you're invited to stand up and move towards the area to your left to participate in communion. Thank you.